And welcome back to centralcoastradio.com. Well, now we're going to talk about one of the most eagerly anticipated movies of this year. In fact, probably one of the most eagerly anticipated films of the past few years, because everybody over the last few years have been hearing so much about The Flash. DC were very proud to be able to reveal the fact that Michael Keaton was returning as Batman in this one. But of course, the other stuff that people have been talking about is the sad demise of the actor who plays the Flash, Ezra Miller, who's been having some personal problems outside of his movie life, and people have been wondering whether or not this movie can be good enough to keep him in the role, or whether or not he'll lose the role after all the stuff that's been going on. But of course, now The Flash is out. Lee and I had the opportunity to see it at the premiere the other night. And Lee, what was your initial thoughts of The Flash?
I thought it started off really strongly. The scenes with Barry / Ezra Miller introducing his character and the responsibility that he has to help the world, if you want to call it that, is really clear. There's some humour at the start, which in a cafe situation, which I thought was really well done. Throughout the film, there's some really visually stunning scenes, and I think in particular, some of the things I really enjoyed about this movie was the Batman scenes, and some of the visually stunning scenes with Batman stuff. I won't go into too much because I don't like to spoil. But I think in this movie, something that was a little confusing for me was, I guess, time travel versus multiverse. I think that multiverse has been done over and over again over, recent years, and to be honest, it's getting a little bit tiresome for me. That's a personal opinion. I'm sure there's many people out there that just love that multiverse type of, type of movies. But I was just thinking too, Dave, you're a huge comic book fan. We know that you have read them as a kid, you've read them as an adult. You can almost recite some of them, you know them back to front. And I was just personally wondering if that time travel versus multiverse in the original comic was there. Was it more multiverse, or was it time travel more like, I guess, a Back to the Future?
It was a little bit of both, and I think that's I think The Flash has come out at the wrong time. We've seen Marvel go into their whole multiverse thing with both the Spider-Man franchises, and I say both franchises of Spider-Man. So I almost feel like this film has come out at the wrong time, because the basic premise of this movie is that Barry Allen, played by Ezra Miller, wants to go back in time and be able to prove that his dad didn't murder his mother. And he takes that one step further and decides to stop her from being murdered, which is something that Bruce Wayne, played by Ben Affleck, warns him about could have absolutely catastrophic consequences for the timeline. But he goes back and does it anyway, and finds that things do go awry, because suddenly he doesn't find himself back in our time zone. He finds himself in another time where his character hasn't found his abilities yet, and that is also then becomes a multiverse story, because when he starts to try to put together the Justice League, because Zod, played by Michael Shannon, starts to attack Earth, he suddenly finds out that various members of the Justice League either don't exist or are very different, and when he hunts down Batman, it's the Michael Keaton Batman that, of course, we grew up with. And of course, I'm not spoiling anything here as well. There's no Superman in that universe. It's Supergirl, played by Sasha Cale as well. So it almost feels to me like it trips itself up, because I know that the film is kind of exploring the abilities that the Flash has, but realistically, he went back in time to change what happened to his mother. That theoretically in the DC universe shouldn't have opened up a multiverse. It should have just changed things. So yeah, like to have a different Bruce Wayne and things like that, it's a lot to get your head around. I think thankfully for DC, because Marvel's already done that explanation of what a multiverse is, I think that actually helps the Flash in a way. But I agree with you that perhaps this wasn't the right time for this film to come out, because we have had so much multiverse stuff in Marvel. And I know that it was kind of explored in Justice League in a little bit of a sense, but yeah, it kind of feels like the science of this movie trips itself up. But there was elements of this film I did really like. So I have to use this line because I thought of it when I was watching it. It's like Marvel gives us large aliens attacking Earth. DC throws babies and therapy dogs out windows of a hospital. So the opening sequence of this is Batman's busy, so Alfred calls Barry and aka the Flash to help out with this sinkhole that's been happening when a hospital starts falling into it. So it's interesting because it's a really dark scene, but they put humor into it as well, which for some people may work and for some people may not work. But I guess it's kind of tying into what DC's been doing with Suicide Squad and stuff like that, where it's okay to be darker and to have those things in it. But I don't think this movie grabbed me the way that I thought it was going to be. I love DC, and I didn't feel like this movie grabbed me. I wanted the battle scene between Zod, Supergirl, the two Barrys, and Michael Keaton Batman. I wanted that to be absolutely epic, but to me it didn't feel like anything more epic than I would see in a DC television show. And I don't know why. I don't know why the director didn't do that. One of the things and I might be really wrong here, but this director has normally done horror in the past. He's done stuff like It and things like that. Maybe action sequences are not something that he's used to, like big set pieces like that, but I just felt underwhelmed. I loved parts of it, but I just felt really, really underwhelmed. And what saved it for me were the cameos. There's some cameos that we can't talk about here. I was excited to see Michael Keaton play Batman again because, of course, Michael Keaton was my Batman when I was growing up. So I was excited about that, and I was excited to see where they went with that. And I love the fact that there's some things in there that maybe people wouldn't expect them to do with some of the characters that they bring in. And I love that element of it, but I just found this to be a little bit underwhelming, to be honest.
I think too, and it's in the preview, so it's not spoiling anything, but the character of Barry, obviously, because it's multiverse Barry, and, you know, with the time zones, yeah. Barry comes into contact with himself as Barry, and I think some of the scenes worked with them, you know, in some of the scenes they have together, it works really well. But in other scenes, it feels like one character is trying to be so immature that it actually just becomes annoying and frustrating. You actually like this, you know, you've got someone who's 18 who is acting like they're, 14, just really immature in their approach to that character. And I get that that's how the character is meant to be, that's how it's written, but it just became overwhelmingly annoying at times.
I thought they made him too dumb. Like, I get that they were trying to say that in the world where Barry had his parents, that he was a bit immature, whereas the other Barry has had to grow up because his mum was murdered at an early age, and then he's spent the last few years of his life trying to get his dad out of jail. I do get that, but at the same time, I thought they made the other Barry too dumb.
Yeah.
And it almost came across as a Dumb and Dumber kind of thing, which I thought was a little bit disrespectful to the character of the Flash. But for me, it was just that underwhelming nature. Like I said, the big action set piece, I wanted it to be huge. Like the introduction of Supergirl, seeing Michael Keaton back as Batman. But to be honest, my favourite Michael Keaton scenes in this was back in the Batcave when he was working with Barry. Yeah, I don't know, that action sequence to me just felt really, really underwhelming, and I wanted something really special. I think also for me, like, I enjoyed the Batman sequences a lot more. Ben Affleck is in like a pretty action-packed sequence at the start of this film, and to me that was a better action sequence than the big set piece. So
I was certainly drawn more to the Batman storylines than the Flash. There were certain scenes of the Flash I really, really did enjoy and thought that Ezra Miller did a really great job too.
Again, I think the scenes at the start when he's like working to free his dad are a lot better scenes than what actually happens once it gets into the multiverse stuff.
Yeah, and I think the emotion of wanting to, you know, to help Dad, but also, you know, to go back in time and help his mum.
Yeah.
I think those scenes were actually really good and really well acted out.
Yeah.
And I think Ezra's done a really good performance there. But I think, overall, I was drawn more to the Batman storylines. And that's just a personal thing, but I just liked the way that was directed and written. And I do have to say, Michael Keaton was not my favourite Batman of all time. But I actually grew to like him so much more in this.
He's 71 years old, throwing himself around in a Batman suit. So
and it was just a different take on his character in some ways. And I was really drawn to like him more. So I think if I went back and watched those originals again, I think I might like it more because I connected more with him in this than I did in the previous ones. But yeah, I did love that both Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck were in this one.
Yeah, they also bring in a bit of a sad bit there too, that I loved about Barry's character. There's a really sad scene early on in this movie where he's talking to Bruce Wayne, the Ben Affleck Bruce Wayne, and he says, "Oh, how about we go out for dinner?" And Bruce is like, "Nah, man, I'm really busy. I need to go, maybe another time." And you really get the feeling that Barry's trying to see Bruce as a dad.
Yeah.
Like that. And he even says at one point to Alfred, "Why does it always feel like when it comes to the Justice League, I'm the last guy that you go to, and it's normally cleaning up the Bat's mess?"
The afterthought.
I love that element of the film, and I wish they'd brought that out more
there's a bit in it that came out a couple of times, and you actually did feel sorry for him and felt like he was probably quite a lonely person as the Flash, and had a lot of responsibility and was kind of left by himself a lot with that responsibility. So I enjoyed those components of the film for sure.
So what are you going to give The Flash out of 5 and why?
I think I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. While there was a lot that I really enjoyed about this film, there was also, as I said, that bit of confusion about the time travel and timeline. I think I personally would have preferred it to be a bit more, I'm not saying be Back to the Future, but just that kind of more take on the timeline than a multiverse. I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if it had gone down that path. I did enjoy the movie, but as I said, I did find the character of the immature Barry frustrating at times. But as I said, I did enjoy the movie overall.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. Like, I don't know. I almost feel like this is a movie that I need to go back and watch again. But I just felt underwhelmed. Like, I was expecting this to be such a huge DC movie because of like the nostalgia of bringing back like Michael Keaton and people like that. And of course, it was always going to be a little bit different because Michael Keaton was Tim Burton's Batman. So it was a little bit of a darker Batman. So with that Batman in the hands of a different director and a different screenwriter, of course, that was always going to be a little bit different. But yeah, I just felt a little bit underwhelmed. Like the Michael Keaton part probably saved it for me. But I just feel that maybe this director needs to work on action set pieces. I mean, I've loved his horrors over the years, don't get me wrong, but I just felt that big battle sequence between Supergirl, Zod, the Barrys, and the Michael Keaton Batman was just a little bit underwhelming. So I'm going to give it 3 stars as well. The Flash, it's a general release, so it should be showing in a cinema near you. 3 stars from both Lee and I, and we'll be back in just a moment on centralcoastradio.com.